have hit live. I have hit record. Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a very special episode of the Pakistan Experience. Months in the making. कभी आप अवेलेबल नहीं होते, कभी मैं अवेलेबल नहीं होता, but finally the stars have aligned. Star crossed authors आज मिल रहे हैं. Mr. Zarrar Said, how are you, sir?
I'm good, brother. कैसे हो?
बिल्कुल ठीक, जबरदस्त. आप तो आ गए हैं पाकिस्तान एक्सपीरियंस पे. आपकी किताब क्यों नहीं आ रही पाकिस्तान? लेट्स गेट स्ट्रेट इनटू इट. व्हाई इज प्योरलैंड नॉट अवेलेबल इन पाकिस्तान? फॉर पीपल हु डोंट नो, जरा सेड इज एन ऑथर, अ राइटर, वो जो सेम चीज ही होती है, बट मैं कह रहा हूँ बुक्स के अलावा भी चीजें लिखते हैं, एंड हैज रिटन द नॉवेल प्योरलैंड.
Yeah, basically the thing is that Pakistan mein, first of all, not many people read, right? That's, there's a very low literacy rate. The people that do read don't read novels, and the people that read novels don't read literary novels. And so the graph just keeps getting smaller and smaller. Basically what happened is कि जब मैंने ये किताब लिखी थी तो उस time the overall the publishing world is controlled by India, right? India publishes most of the books that are sold in the world. उनका ये है कि they print them cheaper, they edit them cheaper, and ये जितने भी आपके राइटर्स हैं दुनिया में वो सारे वहाँ से प्रिंट करा के और शिप करते हैं. तो पाकिस्तान में हुआ ये था कि एक तो my book was considered very controversial because it was loosely based on the life of Abdul Salam, and secondly that it was published in India primarily and was shipped to Pakistan. So basically ये चक्कर था वहाँ पे.
But I mean, to be honest, almost all the books in Pakistan, या एटलीस्ट जो कंटेम्प्रेरी ऑथर्स की सारी किताबें ऑलमोस्ट सारी इंडिया में छपती हैं. सो व्हाई हैज योर बुक बीन सिंगल्ड आउट?
ये पाकिस्तान में जो है ना, लाइक एक मोनोपोली सी है लिबर्टी बुक्स की, ठीक है, एंड अदर एक दो लोग हैं जो they basically control the pulse of what gets published in Pakistan, what gets sold in the bookstores. So Liberty Books वाले और एक दो और they said कि यार ये हम रखेंगे अपने वेयरहाउस में रख सकते हैं किताब, लेकिन हम फ्रंट उस पे नहीं रखेंगे लाइक शॉप में और ये वो. मैंने कहा ठीक है, मैंने कहा भाई बता दो क्यों नहीं रखते. तो एंड दे वर लाइक यार वो हमने सुना है कि इसके बारे में कोई कंट्रोवर्सी और ये वो, तो इसलिए हम नहीं करते. एनीवे, सो that's what happened. Secondly, ये है कि they also control that when shipments come in from India, कि कितने किताबें आ रही हैं, कितनी नहीं आ रही हैं, कितना डिमांड है, ये वो. And also, if the bookstores are not doing it. The third thing is that Imran Khan ने I think ban लगा दिया था to have this kind of trade of things from India coming in. So that's one of the biggest things. And if you ask any other author that is trying to get published in Pakistan, that's one of the most painful thing is that they can't get their books into the country. And honestly, I really don't care. Pakistan is not a big market for me to sell books. अगर मैं 1000 किताबें पाकिस्तान में बेच दूं, I'm a legend, like इतने लोग किताबें खरीदते भी नहीं है. So
यार ये तो आई मीन थोड़ा मिसनोमर नहीं है? वी डू मतलब टू जनरलाइज के, ये किसी ने कमेंट्स में भी किया है कि पाकिस्तान में लोग किताबें खरीदते ही नहीं है और पढ़ते ही नहीं है. डोंट यू थिंक दैट्स अ ग्रोस जनरलाइजेशन?
Yeah, it is, and it's based on facts. I mean, मुझे आप बता दो कितनी किताबें लाइक मोहसिन हामिद कितनी किताबें बेचता है पाकिस्तान में, कामिला शम्सी कितनी बेचती है, and you'll be shocked by looking at the numbers.
कितनी बेचती है कामिला शम्सी? Give me the number.
I'm telling you, it's not that much. So
what is it? I mean, if you factually know it, what is it?
It's not even in the thousands, to be honest, like per year. Like it's maybe a few hundred a year. Like it's laughable. And one of the reasons is because they're not very cheap. Books are not cheap to buy.
When we say when we say I think people don't read, we shouldn't even just take the numbers of Liberty Books पे कितनी बिकी हैं. Illegally कितने लोगों ने PDF डाउनलोड करके, I mean all the college kids who are reading books, they're not buying 1200-1500 की किताबें या 2500 की किताबें when they're launched. I mean, I just
Yeah.
went to the bookstore. Launch जब होती है किताब वो 2500 की होती है. For a college student, you can't even read a book a month. I mean, for most students probably in Pakistan can't even read a book for 3 months 2500 की. तो अगर वो illegally download करके पढ़ रहे हैं तो पढ़ तो रहे हैं लोग यार.
Yeah, you just exemplified what I just said. So basically, I'm talking about book sales, right? Book sales is different from illegal downloads. That's a very different argument. But anyway, that's the crux of why people don't have my book. लेकिन ऐसे लोगों ने मुझे reach out किया यार मुझे आपकी किताब नहीं मिल रही पाकिस्तान में, please can you send me this that ebook download हो सकती है, like if you can go on Amazon and like download or like through a VPN or whatever, but book sales are very very hard to come by.
So I guess industry नहीं है ना उसकी वजह से, but we can't really say कि पाकिस्तानी को पढ़ने का शौक ही नहीं है.
मैंने ये नहीं कहा कि शौक नहीं है, मैंने कहा कि लोग पढ़ते नहीं. That's a different thing. So
मेरे टाइप के लोग हैं, खरीद के रख लेते हैं, पढ़ते नहीं है.
यार मुझे पता है एक बंदे ने मुझे ना मैसेज किया, some guy that I know for a long time. उसने मुझे कहा यार I just bought a new bookshelf and I really want to put your book on the shelf. उसने basically like ये नहीं कि मैं पढ़ूंगा या जो भी है, he wanted to create like this illusion of having books around, and I found that very fascinating.
Book buying and book reading are two completely different hobbies.
Yeah.
I blame my ADHD and procrastination. I've started a lot more books than I've finished in my life. ये एक tragedy है. Yes, we are live. RS Gill, अगर आपके कोई सवाल हैं तो पूछ लें. So let's get into storytelling and the art of storytelling. So how did you decide के so idea जब आया, how did you decide कि ये novel है as opposed to कि ये short story है या ये film है या ये क्या है?
Yeah, Shazad, I think you and I, know the answer to this. Zakir, my friend Zakir and I, we went to the same college in Ohio, and we were both physics students. So we had to leave the country of our birth to learn about Abdul Salam and his, fascinating journey and the story of his life. I was 18 years old when I learned this story, and we were kids, हम बच्चे थे यार उस टाइम, like हमें पता भी नहीं था क्या. हमने कहा यार ये क्या कमाल बंदा है, like क्या कमाल स्टोरी है, इसको फिल्म बननी चाहिए, इसकी किताब बननी चाहिए, इसका ये बनना चाहिए, वो we talked about it for a long time. Zakir went his separate way, I went my separate way, and he ended up making the fabulous documentary which is on Netflix now, called Salam, and a lot of people now know about this story.
Yeah, the first aesthetic Nobel laureate.
Nobel laureate. And I wrote the non-fiction version. I started the non-fiction version, which was telling the story of this guy who was born into in a village and grows up to achieve the most astounding thing. But as I went through this journey, I learned that this story was too mystical. It was too fascinating. It was too, mythical, and so I had to turn it into a fiction story. मतलब आप कैसे, how would you tell the story of a guy who, when he's born, his life is a prophecy? You know what I mean? उसका बाप जो है वो पीर के पास जाता है, कहता है इसका मैं क्या करूँ, ये बात नहीं करता, ये बोलता नहीं है. तो पीर ने कहा कि जब ये बोलना शुरू करेगा तो पूरी दुनिया सुनेगी. Like how do you turn that into non-fiction? It's impossible. So what I did was, like, I used the art of fiction, the art of storytelling, to tell a story about this fascinating journey about this guy who goes on to achieve great things. But I also, to make it interesting, I turned it into a love story. So that's the
गैब्रियल गार्सिया मार्केस का आई थिंक कोट है ना कि जो हमारी जिंदगी है उसके बारे में जब हम लिखना शुरू करें तो वो रियलिज्म और फैंटेसी के बीच में कहीं आता है. And I think what that
magical realism is the word that they use. Yeah.
Is that what you would categorize your work in?
When the first जब सबसे पहले somebody wrote a review of my book in one of the India Times, I can't remember. They compared it to like magical realism, Salman Rushdie, and all that other stuff, right? And उस time मुझे समझ नहीं है कि ये क्या कह रहे हैं यार, magical realism क्या बकवास है, you know, like, तो उसका मतलब ये है कि magical realism का मतलब is that when you tell a story, so it's the art form of telling the story, right? In the South Asian narrative, हमारी जो कहानियां हैं वो है ही सारी magical realism के बेस के ऊपर, ठीक है? जैसे यार हमारी पंजाबी फिल्में देख लो, you know, like हमारी उर्दू की फिल्में देख लो, like Indian फिल्में देख लो, it's all about magic and song and dance and, you know, mythical creatures and stuff like that. So I didn't know what I was doing when I was writing the book, and later on I realized this is what I was doing. Gabriel Garcia Marquez is also from that school of thought. वो उनका भी यही देसी कल्चर है ना, कोलंबियन देसी हैं बेसिकली, साउथ अमेरिकन, हाँ देसी सीन है उनका, तो वो भी इसी तरह का माहौल रखते हैं ना, like they also like tell stories in a very similar fashion in which, you know, the bullet is traveling through the door and it has feelings and then it enters the heart and it goes through the heart, you know, इस तरह की वो बातें रखता है वो, so that's basically what it is.
आई फील ये आजकल रियलिज्म एक बड़ा बजवर्ड बन गया है और सबको रियलिस्ट, हर चीज रियलिस्ट चाहिए होती है विदाउट एक्चुअली रियलाइजिंग के वक्त इस लफ्ज का मतलब क्या है. तो आई तो लव आवर कल्चर, इवन अगर आप स्टेज शोज की बात करें या बॉलीवुड की बात करें या
ओह कमाल
फैंटेसी कल्चर है, इट्स ब्रिलियंट. मतलब ये लोग जाकर $150 देकर लायन किंग देख लेंगे, मटिल्डा देख लेंगे, विकेट देख लेंगे ब्रॉडवे पे और बोलेंगे वाओ व्हाट अ ग्रेट प्रोडक्शन. बट देन दे विल बी लाइक ये कुछ होता है रियलिस्टिक नहीं है. तो भाई वो कुछ होता है इज नॉट मेंट टू बी रियलिस्टिक. Look at it in the same mold as musicals. There are musicals which are inspired by Bollywood. They trace their history together. तो हाँ हम फंस जाते हैं, हमारी सुई फंस जाती है. रियलिज्म आजकल बजवर्ड है तो सबकी सुई वहां फंसी हुई है.
ये पता है, this all stems from the stories that we are told growing up and the stories that we believe in, right? Storytelling is very important. We are the only creature on earth that tells stories, you know, to each other. From the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, we tell each other stories. That's how we survived 100,000 years ago. जो कहानियां जो है जो अब हमें पता है, like, you know, like the stories that have survived has either survived because they're forced on us or they've survived because they're pretty good, you know, they're good stories. So who decides what stories can be told and what can't be told is the most important part. तुम्हारा ये अगर पॉडकास्ट यूट्यूब कैमरा कंट्रोल कर रहा होता नहीं, खत्म हो जाता, you know. अगर कोई और कंट्रोल कर रहा होता, like it was control over it, these stories that you and I are telling would not be told. And so it's important to tell, like for children especially, that the stories that they're told as children are the ones that they're going to keep, you know, throughout their lives. One of the most fascinating stories ever told is religion, right? किसी बच्चे को आप बताओ कि यार जीसस होता था, वो पानी के ऊपर चलता था और वो हाथ लगाता था, अगला बंदा जो था वो ठीक हो जाता, you know. Fascinating story. Adam and Eve होती थी, like, you know, Adam had to like take a rib out of his chest and create this woman, and then she did something bad and they can't go back to the place they fell in love and, you know, and all that stuff. It's a fascinating story, but it's not real, but the metaphor is there, right? The reason why these stories have survived is because of a sort of enforcement of whatever powers that be that were there. There are so many stories that have not been told. And one of the things in America, I live in New York City, and one of the things in America that's happening in the last 2 years, jab se George Floyd ka qatl hua tha, is people are realizing, holy shit, there's been an entire like 400 years of stories of people that have vanished. The stories that we were told that ye America yahan pe is tarah bana aur founding fathers jo the wo bahut hi kamal log the aur ye the wo the. Now we're learning, now we already knew, there's a lot of people that already knew, but now they're starting to say, what about the other stories, the immigrant story of, you know, the Italian American or the Irish American or the Bangladeshi American or this and that. Like, what happened to those stories? What happened to the African American story from 300 years ago? And so those things are now becoming a thing. You know, the diversity or inclusion एक चीज बन गई. हर ऑफिस में एक diversity और inclusion का बंदा उन्होंने बैठा दिया है. उन्होंने एक council बैठाया हुआ है कि यार, let's make sure that these stories are now told in our narrative going forward as a company, as a people, and this and that. So think about all those stories in the history of time that have been wiped away or vanished, and for some reason or another.
So ये बहुत क्लीशेड सा प्रोवर्ब है, सबने सुना हुआ होगा कि एक अफ्रीकन प्रोवर्ब है, till the lion doesn't know how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. But आजकल जो ये वो कल्चर में डिस्कशंस हो रहे हैं, who gets to write what story,
Right.
whether you even have a right to somebody else's story. Do you grapple with that idea? So like, if, for instance, I don't
All
know
the
anything
time.
I don't know anything about your identity, but when you're writing, do you also assume a broader identity? Ki, yaar, I have a right to write this, or do you question yourself when
No,
you're writing?
never. You're not supposed to. Why? It's not your job as a writer to question yourself or become an editor or become a critic. When you're a writer, you just write. The art form of writing is creativity and the beauty of putting together words. Um, at that time, you don't think about these things. You know, you don't think about these things because it takes away from the art. You know what I mean? जो एक पेंटर है जो वो पेंट कर रहा है, तो उसको आप कहोगे यार तुम पेंट ना करो, तुम पता है ये सोचो कि ये लाइनें इस तरह होनी चाहिए, इस तरह होनी चाहिए. Like that doesn't work. It
हाँ,
takes away from that, you know.
but उसका वो मतलब ठीक है, मैं बहुत एंटी वो कल्चर हूँ, बट आई मीन दे हैव अ पॉइंट, राइट? अगर गोरे अपनी तरफ से लेट्स से हम उसको बिल्कुल ही सिंपलीफाई करके पेंटिंग की एग्जांपल ले लें, इफ दे कीप पेंटिंग द ब्लैक पीपल एज फूल्स, या मिन्स्ट्रेल शोज की, थिएटर की आप हिस्ट्री, you're in the US, you know, so that reinforces a stereotype. So you need to be
Yeah.
conscious of things like that. So when people argue, yes, they might go to an extreme when they say men can't even write about women. I mean, it would be quite a boring story to write a story where only men exist if you're a man, or if only women exist when you're a woman. That might be an extremist position. But there is some merit to the idea that if you're not from a certain identity, without being conscious of their troubles and their lived experiences, uh, you might teeter on being problematic.
Oh, okay. That's what you're asking. I don't know. Maybe that's true. But I mean, the second novel I'm doing is a U.S. immigrant, first generation immigrant story. And the reason why I did this is because abhi bhi U.S. man, like, or around the world, people read this book called Catcher in the Rye. Have you heard about it? इतनी चूतिया
जॉन
किताब है
लेनन मर
बहन
गया था ना उसकी वजह से.
इतनी चूतिया किताब है यार. I can't even tell you, it's such a shit show. I mean, it's such a shit book. The reason why is it's about a rich kid who leaves his private school and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he comes to New York and he walks around, and how the hell am I supposed to relate to that, right? How the hell is someone in a Bangladeshi immigrant child in Queens supposed to relate to that bullshit, right? So that's not the America that is around. That's what I'm saying, that these stories have survived. They force it upon children to read it in 9th grade or 10th grade. Jo bhi hai. It's such a shit book. And you know what I said? I told myself I have to write a book that is more contemporary and that has to do with, people of this generation. And so that's why I went on this journey. And I think this is an important thing to know, that this is also part of this storytelling culture. Like जैसे तुमने कहा ना, ये stories and Cinderella, ये हम बचपन में हम ये सुनते आ रहे हैं, because we've been told that these are the better stories, that these are the ones that we need to learn about. And that's fascinating, because there's so many other stories of our culture that have been lost or that haven't been told. I had to leave the country of my birth to learn about Abdul Salam, for example, to learn about Ghalib. Like Ghalib sikha like in college, I learned it. I went to the library, wahan pe kitabin thi, and I taught myself how to read Urdu. I never learned Urdu before that.
What was your schooling over here?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dubai most of my life. And I moved to Lahore when I was 16, 15. and I
तो
stayed.
कहाँ
I
से
only
गालिब पढ़ना था यार दुबई में? दुबई में कौन
यार
गालिब पढ़ा था?
नहीं
Where
पता
did
ना
you go
यार
to
तो
school in Lahore?
in I learned about Ghalib when I went to Ohio out of all places.
But what
Yeah,
school were you in Lahore when you moved to Lahore?
Lahore American School, LAS.
यार तो you मतलब what are you blaming? मतलब लाहौर अमेरिकन स्कूल
yeah,
जाके you're saying कि वो पाकिस्तान में नहीं पढ़ाया जाता. इंटर मैट्रिक के
yeah,
स्टूडेंट सबको गालिब पता होता है. यस, गलत तरीके से पढ़ाते हैं.
yeah.
जो चीजें
No,
वो सही
मैंने ये
पढ़ाने
नहीं कह
वाले
रहा
वो
कि
नहीं है. लेकिन
I had to
लाहौर
leave.
अमेरिकन स्कूल में कैसे गालिब का पता चलना था यार?
यार लेकिन क्यों नहीं पता चलना था? अब लाहौर में होना है यार, अब
हाँ भाई.
पाकिस्तान में होना, तो that's the irony of this whole situation.
So
कि
I think
अच्छा मेरा तो फिर भी सीन ये था कि I was a very intellectually curious person. यार पाकिस्तान में ऐसा ऐसा बच्चा बैठा हुआ है जिसको उर्दू नहीं आती, जो इंग्लिश बोलता है ऐसे एक्सेंट से जो मुझे नहीं पता भाई कि वो कहाँ से आया, यू नो लाइक
क्या
आपके।
मसला इसमें?
यार इसमें मसला ये है कि they they think that some things are better than other things just because they are, या English बोलना बहुत superior है from Urdu बोलना. And I think we talked about this earlier also, okay, one language is not better than another language just because white people speak it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? One language is not better than another language because the socio-economic structure of that language is stronger. आप पाकिस्तान में बैठे हो, सबसे बड़ा एग्जांपल यही है ना यार कि मतलब एक एक कंट्री जहां पे 75 या 80% पंजाबी या पंजाबी डायलेक्ट बोलती है, उसके ऊपर आपने एक ऐसी लैंग्वेज थोप दी है कि जो हमारी है ही नहीं. ये
Are
एक
you talking about
सेंट्रल.
Urdu या English?
Yeah, Urdu imperialism, and I don't know how we're transgressing into this, but like Urdu imperialism is an example of this storytelling bullshit, right? This is a central Indian language, and I think you mentioned it many times कि ये जॉन एलिया कहता है कि ये यूपी के लौंडों की साजिश है, तो ये यूपी के लौंडे लेके आए थे ना यहाँ पे कि यार ये देखो ये जाहिल से लोग हैं, इनके साथ हम इनके ऊपर हम ये लैंग्वेज डालेंगे और that's it, and that's what happened,
So
right?
you
So
went.
that's
Sorry,
so
I'm just trying to
yeah,
chart your. So you went to Lahore American School, and
yeah.
then did you do your bachelor's here या उसके बाद direct
No,
America?
then I went to the US.
So you were in Pakistan for 2 years of your life.
Like 3 or 4, and then I came back, and I came back after working here for a year or so, and then I came back for 4 years. I don't know why. I came back for a little while, and then I moved back for my master's, and I stayed here since. I mean, I've lived in the US longer than I've lived anywhere else,
वही. So I'm just like in terms of पाकिस्तान का ये डाइवर्स बहुत है यार. आई थिंक अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स व्हेन पीपल गो टू लाइक एलजीएस बीकन हाउस टाइप भी, हम अगर लाहौर
Yeah.
अमेरिकन स्कूल के एक दो लेवल नीचे आ जाए, उनका जो एक्सपीरियंस होता है इट्स वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रम द एक्सपीरियंस
And
ऑफ
I know,
पीपल इन
I know,
द
I know where you're
कंट्री.
going. Yeah, I know
नहीं,
where you're going with that.
generally भी,
But
generally
yeah,
also urban elite in Pakistan, I think they're very disconnected,
oh
very
yeah,
very
of course,
with the rest of the country.
absolutely.
So the reason I even asked you कि उर्दू या इंग्लिश, कि इंग्लिश पे ये बात लोगों को फिर भी पॉपुलर सेंटिमेंट में समझ में आ जाती है. जब आप उर्दू पे लेकर आए हैं तो लोग परेशान हो जाते हैं, स्पेशली जो अर्बन एलिट है, कि व्हाट डू यू मीन उर्दू इज आवर नेशनल लैंग्वेज. मतलब 7% ऑफ पाकिस्तानी स्पोक उर्दू ड्यूरिंग पार्टीशन. तो इट्स आयरॉनिक कि हमने उर्दू को नेशनल लैंग्वेज बना दिया है,
यार
बट वो जो
सबसे
नेशनलिज्म और इंपीरियलिज्म उर्दू के अंदर है, मोस्ट पीपल डोंट सी इट.
भाई सबसे बड़ी ट्रेजेडी तो ये है कि पंजाबी जो मुस्लिम पंजाब था, I I have researched this, and we are the only culture that I know of in the last century or 2 centuries that have destroyed our own language. You know what I mean? Have taken the axe or shot ourselves in the foot with finesse. With हमने अपने culture को eradicate किया खुद ही, and the reason why is economic reasons, right? जो first generation पंजाबी लोग थे in the 40s and 50s, उन्होंने अपने बच्चों को उर्दू बोलनी सिखाई. उसकी क्या वजह थी? कि उनको नौकरियां मिले, वो CSS करेंगे और जाएंगे और ये वो. No, उन्होंने जब बच्चे पैदा किए, they probably spoke Punjabi with each other, but I know so many families where the parents आपस में वो पंजाबी बोलते हैं और बच्चों के साथ वो उर्दू बोलते हैं. It's the most
Which is why when
disgusting
जब
thing I've ever
आपने
seen.
accents की बात की थी, I was
हाँ,
pushing back a little because I don't
हाँ,
blame anybody यार. They literally
yeah,
लोग केपी में कुछ लोग हैं, उनको आप इंग्लिश सब सुनेंगे ना, आपको टोनी ग्रे साउंड करेगा एंड आई एम लाइक,
हाँ.
ये तुम मिमिक कर रहे हो या वो उन्होंने उनकी इंग्लिश सीखी कमेंट्री सुनकर है.
Commentary
एंड
सुन
बिकॉज
के,
दे
हाँ,
क्रिकेट कमेंट्री सुनकर तो उनकी नॉर्मल इंग्लिश भी से इज बॉलिंग,
हाँ.
we have
Wow.
6 dishes and I'm like, ये accent आ कहाँ
These
से रहा है?
small Bangladeshis.
So even if they're
Yeah.
faking it, but if they've been told कि उनकी social subsistence इससे linked है, hustle man, can't blame the hustle. Hustle करें, accent बनाएं, जैसे उनको
I
नौकरियां
love the
मिलती हैं.
hustle, bro.
I
Love the
love the
hustle.
hustle 100%.
Love, bro. Love it.
अच्छा, कोई
नहीं
पूछ
तो
रहा
ये
है कि
सीन है.
कोई पूछ रहा है आप स्टीवन किंग की तरह 6-7 घंटे बैठकर लिखते हैं या डू यू वेट फॉर इंस्पिरेशन?
No, I'm very regimented. I I write, uh, 2-3 hours when I'm creating. I do 2-3 hours at a time because that's the most you can do. My brain doesn't work. Creation takes a lot of mental energy. When I'm editing, yeah, it may be 4 or 5 hours at a time. And most of writing, most of novel writing is editing, 90%.
All
Only
writing
10%. Yeah, most of the fun part is the creation, and then editing just takes years actually. So the writing might take 6, 7, 8 months, and then editing will take a year or 2 years.
So when you say 2-3 hours, do you set the world aside and just sit in front of a laptop, or is
Yeah,
it like inspirational chunks कि 15 मिनट कुछ आया, then मैंने सोचा, फिर 15 मिनट कुछ आया?
it depends on the day. In creative writing, the most important thing is that your characters tell you what to do, right? Should we do an example right now?
नहीं.
No. So like if yeah, the creation is happening through the created entity. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the person that you have created, or the character, will tell you, okay, I don't like Coke, I like Pepsi. I don't like sunshine, I like rain. I'm fat or thin, I like eating this, I don't like eating that. And that's how it works. And then you become the vehicle of that creation. And then you are just someone who follows this person around. And if you're lucky, the character that you create, if it's so fascinating that it takes over the entire narrative, it becomes the book, or becomes the story. And if you don't have a character like that, kill it, let it die off. It doesn't work. And then you start again.
So the reason I'm also interested in asking this is कि मैं काफी neurodivergent इंसान हूँ. I let things consume me. So I can write an entire script in a night, or I can procrastinate over it for 5 years. मेरी 2016 में I got a book deal, जो आज तक मैंने एक चैप्टर भेज दिया था. But I mean, if things consume me, if my ADHD and my manic episode हो जाए, then I can't stop thinking about it, writing about it in that world. And then I drain myself doing that, and then I can't go back to it. So did you experience that and then had to find your way of doing it, or were you always regimented?
No, I was very regimented. मेरा पता क्या सीन था कि I got early success very, very early in my success, as in like I got a fascinating agent and all this other stuff. It went to my head, मैं अपने आप को पता नहीं क्या समझने लग गया कि यार मैं
खलील और
I just
रहमान
wrote it.
कमर.
हाँ, मैंने कहा यार मैं तो कोर्स खोल दूंगा बैंक. मतलब है कि आगे पीछे like मेरे लोग आगे ऐसे लोग आगे पीछे फिर रहे हैं. Like I'm going to these parties, I'm meeting these authors, I'm like on easy street. That was the worst thing that happened to me, because उसमें हुआ ये कि I lost the knowledge of the thing that I need to struggle to get to where I am. I need to work hard to get to where I am. I need to learn the art of storytelling. I can't just mimic someone and be an artist, or I can't just like write something in 2 years and expect that I'm going to be huge. And so I lost that agent. I lost that book deal. I lost all that stuff. And I went back to square one and I taught myself how to write. And I said, look, now I need to do the hard work, and I need to learn how to craft a paragraph, a page, a chapter, a narrative. I need to learn it. Like, I can't just write something. It doesn't work like that in fiction. You can't just write a story and expect it to be sold. It has to be beautiful. It has to be written in a way that people read it and are like, oh, that makes sense to me in different angles, different vectors के साथ आपको जो है ना वो story लग रही है. Like एक कहानी है, उसके साथ multiple layers हैं उसके साथ एक you know, like fiction is the only way your mind is forced to think about other things that relate to that story and that relate to that chapter.
So you're consciously thinking about how it will be sold. There are certain people who might argue कि यार मैं जब art बना रहा होता हूँ, I can't really think about the commercial value or the commodification या how it will be sold. I'm just making it for myself. Do you feel like वो bullshit है, या ये जो ख्याल है कि ये बिकेगा कैसे, ये चलेगा क्या, इसकी market value क्या होगी? That's a part of the process.
Any artist that says that they don't think about the commercial aspect is lying. You know, of course you think about that. I mean, what good is a manuscript that sits in your drawer? You know what I mean? You write because you want someone to read it. Don't let any artist tell you this bullshit. It's not true. They write or they paint because they want people to see it. They make movies because they want people to watch them, you know? ये बकवास है. Like, you know, I don't think मैं artist हूँ, मैं हूँ बकवास.
I'm sure, I mean, वो extreme example की कोई बनाता है जो किसी को दिखाना नहीं चाहता. I'm sure that instance might also agree, but the argument is not, I don't want.
It's a fantasy though.
नहीं यार, but like for instance, if somebody is making a movie and somebody decides कि यार I'm gonna make a movie and say what I want to say, अगर ये big गई और super hit हो गई, great.
That's a different argument. That's a different argument.
I would love that.
That is, I'm creating art for the sake of creating art. I'm not. That's a different argument. I'm not creating commercial art, and I'm not creating something that wants. I don't want to be on the radio. I'm going to create something that will eventually be on the radio. You know, or.
I mean, what I would love for it to be on the radio. So instead of
if it does, yeah, that's fine. That's amazing.
So like even with this podcast, I'd love for every podcast to get 1 million views, but मैं उसको reverse engineer नहीं करता कि this will get 1 million views, so let me make this. That's not how I'm working.
Right. I think we're talking about the same thing. You don't think about that. But when you're doing creative stuff, you're too like your mind is already pretty screwed as it is, right? You don't want to think about कि ये अगर मैं इस market में publish करूँ तो क्या होगा, अगर मैं South में publish करूँ तो क्या होगा, ये वो. I honestly like ये बाद में मुझे अभी समझ आई है कि ऐसा बंदा मुझे यार Memphis, Tennessee से मुझे एक interview आया, like someone is telling me that, you know, we love your book and all this stuff. यार तो केड़े लोग आ गए यार किताबां पढ़ने वाले, इनको क्या पता. My book is about a feudal child growing up in Pakistan. I don't know की पता यार, how did they know this stuff? तो उनके लिए like they were like, we related to this because it mimics the society that we are in. अब मुझे नहीं पता था कि Memphis, Tennessee और इस तरह की जगहों पे you know इस तरह की भी society feudal type है और होगी. वहाँ पे South में तो यही scene था ना, मतलब वहाँ पे वडेरे type scene थे. So like that's why I didn't know that, but now that I know that, it's in my mind कि यार, you know, this is also a thing. So I didn't have to think about that. वो खुद ही हो गया. Like it all automatically happened.
When you're talking about Catcher in the Rye and relatability, I was thinking yaar, relatability, yes, it's very important for black kids to see Black Panther and see themselves represented 100%. But जरूरी नहीं है relatability सिर्फ आपकी skin color या आपकी religion वो चीजें represented हो. I mean मेरी क्या relatability एक Danish prince से कुछ भी नहीं है, but पूरी दुनिया में everybody's found something or the other in Hamlet that speaks to them. So
लगता तो Danish prince लगते हो वैसे, तुम लगते तो हो वैसे Danish prince. हाँ
ये एक और फेल्ड अटेम्प्ट है, जिस तरह मेरा डायलॉग का मजाक उड़ाने का एक फेल्ड अटेम्प्ट। ये जो प्रिविलेज है ना जरार, ये जो आप टेनेसी वाले इंटरनेट पे बैठ के यूज कर रहे हैं और
हाँ
पाकिस्तानी इंटरनेट पे शिट ऑन करते हैं।
ये
चेक योर प्रिविलेज, चेक योर लाहौर अमेरिकन स्कूल प्रिविलेज ब्रो।
वो ये एलएएस वाला मजाक नहीं है भाई, एलएएस वाला कोई मजाक नहीं है।
नहीं, मुझे कुछ मैंने 2-3 दफा पूछा, बड़ा रुक रुक के एलियस आया जवाब में, तो आई वाज लाइक कि क्या सीन है, आ क्यों नहीं रहा जवाब। फिर जब एलियस आया, आई वाज लाइक ओ,
I'm I'm very
I'm a proud
uh,
Lassian.
Lassian.
Did you guys not call
Bro,
yourself Lassians? Lassos?
LAS Buffaloes, the water
Really?
buffaloes. हाँ, Sunday. पंजाबी जिन्हें कहते हैं।
अच्छा, वापस आते हैं जरा टॉपिक पे,
हाँ,
नॉवल नॉवल राइटिंग का जो प्रोसेस है। सो यू, लॉट ऑफ पीपल आल्सो से जस्ट गेट द फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट आउट, जो भी आ रहा है
yeah,
पहला
yeah,
ड्राफ्ट निकाल
that's
लो।
true.
Is that how
That's
you do
true.
it?
That's true. I think Ernest Hemingway or whatever said that the first draft is going to be shit. Just don't, you know, it's going to be shit, right? The fear of having it writing a shit draft shouldn't stop you from finishing it. But once you finish that first draft, that's when things start happening, right? Once you finish that, then you know, okay, now I need to fix this or this and bring it all together. Yeah, so that it's very true. And then it starts the most painful process. The editing part is the most painful. Then you have to
So you
cut
said
things.
editing is painful, but writing is still
Very
fun.
painful.
If you're saying कि 7-8 महीने लगते हैं, I'm sure there are days where you're just like, I just need to vomit these words on the page so that there's something there, ताकि first draft तो एक दफा खत्म होना.
Yeah, it's true. That's जो आप बात कर रहे हो ना vomit, उस vomit के अंदर फिर आप ढूंढते हो कि यार ये भी था, ये भी था, ये इसको साइड पे करो, बाकी चीजें, you know, the, you'll be fascinated by. Can I tell you something? So fiction writing is very different from non-fiction writing. In fiction writing, your subconscious does a lot of the work for you. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that you don't know psychologically that is happening in your thought process, that when you start writing it, then you realize, oh yaar, you know, this is from this. Oh, this is from my childhood, you know, somewhere. I don't even remember, but I'm somehow regurgitating all this stuff. And that's what happens in fiction writing. That's why it's such a beautiful art form, because it makes you realize a lot of things about yourself.
So I also write literary criticism. उसमें कभी-कभी ये masses का feedback ये आता है ना कि the author didn't say it. It doesn't matter, यार. If that was the thought of the time, if that is what the author was experiencing, it doesn't matter if the author consciously was like मैं ये लिख रहा हूँ. अगर यूजीनो नहीं लिखता है, it is best to have never been born, और फिर Long Day's Journey to Night में जो बच्चा मर जाता है उसका नाम यूजीन रख देता है. He's saying something with it, even if he doesn't realize what he's saying. तो subconsciously या consciously आप अगर कोई चीज बना रहे हैं, do you engage with that a lot? So if people are finding theories or things, do you engage with that, or are you like मैंने लिख दिया है, अब जिसको जो मिल रहा है इसमें ये उनका काम
Honestly,
है,
bro,
मैं
I
डाल
don't.
दिया.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't, except for one person who wrote something really obnoxious on Goodreads. एक लड़की थी, पता नहीं young सी लड़की थी, and she wrote something really obnoxious. That this author is trying to do something, he's trying too many things, and this, वो मेरे दिल को बड़ी लगी यार. Like मैं कहा यार ये, you know, this person. Then I told myself कि यार this person just some keyboard warrior who's sitting behind a desk somewhere, wanting to be an author, probably will never get there. And I have to tell myself that I'm a published author around the world. मुझे अपने आप को जरा थोड़ा बताना पड़ता है कि यार तू चीता है, you know. And I don't usually do that. I'm
अच्छा,
really
you
hard
didn't
on
reply.
myself.
आगे से उसका मैसेज आता, bro, I'm JK Rowling. What are you talking about? This is my
यार
other
उसके
book.
बड़ी तकलीफ हुई मुझे, और काफी लोगों ने उसको रिस्पॉन्ड भी किया कि what are you talking about, you don't know. उसके आपस में थ्रेड बन गया, like, you know, like, you don't know what this is actually, it's called irony, it's called sarcasm. Do you not know what that means? It's satire. It's a satire, you know. And that's the stupidity of this whole thing. I wrote a satire type story about someone getting banished from a country, and look what happened to my book. You know what I mean?
I mean,
Look what
that's
happened.
interesting.
It's similar to Salman Saab, and like, you know, his story and what happened to his story, and nobody reads it, and everyone is like very scared to talk about him. You know.
यही तो बट यही तो इंटरेस्टिंग बात है यार. यू कैन रीड इट. अब हाउ टू टेम अ श्रू है मॉडर्न, उसकी जो भी थिएट्रिकल एडेप्टेशंस होती हैं दे डू इट एज सैटायर. अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल आर्ग्यू मैकियावेली ने जो द प्रिंस लिखी है, जो सारे कमीने रियलिस्ट पॉलिटिशियंस अपना बाइबल समझते हैं, अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल आर्ग्यू दैट इट्स आयरॉनिक, इट्स सैटायर. किसी ने अच्छा सवाल पूछा है कि ऐसा होता है कि व्हेन यू आर फिक्सिंग योर फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट, आई गेस दीज आर टू कनेक्टेड क्वेश्चंस. So when you fix your first draft, you realize कि what comes after that, that really is your first draft. कि आपने इतने changes कर दिए हैं that the first draft has fundamentally changed. And somebody also asked what is the difference between writing and editing. So I guess these are two connected questions.
First of all, what an incredibly stupid question. I don't know how to answer that. Like first, the
मेरे
editing
fans
and
के
stuff,
बारे में
like, but
बुराइयां.
editing
मेरे
and writing is the same thing.
कैंसल
It's the same
कैंसल
thing,
जरार सईद को ट्रेंड करवाते हैं.
Already cancel हुआ हूँ, मैंने क्या cancel
और
किया? और जरा cancel हुआ है, उन्हों की cancel करना है. Yeah, I mean, so to answer that, you know, very politely, and I'm sorry if I said offended anyone, but it's the same thing. Writing and editing is the same thing, but the only difference is when you're editing, you are wearing two hats. You're wearing the hat of the creator and also the so it's like you laid the bricks, and then now you're figuring out, okay, is this going to be a wall? Is this an arch? Is this a door? Is this going to be a room? Is this going to be a kitchen? How do I fix this? So that's basically the difference. And they're two equally they're equally the same, but and at the same time one is more conscious of what the outcome is, but whereas when you're creating, you don't really care. You just want to create. And editing
हिना
sometimes
जो
is painful.
हिना जो
Yeah,
लोगों को झूठ बोल रही है कि मेरा नाम आयशा है, उन्होंने पूछा है कि व्हाट मेड यू राइट. आई थिंक वी वेंट ओवर इट राइट एट द स्टार्ट, बट इन केस वी मिस्ड समथिंग, व्हाट मेड यू स्टार्ट राइटिंग एंड व्हाट डू यू एंजॉय अबाउट इट.
it was too powerful. The story was too powerful.
बहुत रेडियो शो टाइप क्वेश्चन, क्या सोच के आपने लिखना शुरू किया?
Yeah, the story was too powerful, man. They didn't. मुझे रात को ख्वाब आता था सलाम का कि यार ये क्या कर एक बंदा, मैं खुद सोचो, because I'm from also I'm also from a feudal family background, and I've been to these feudal villages and I see the children there, and it really fascinates me कि यार एक बच्चा ऐसे गांव में अगर पैदा हुआ, वो Nobel Prize कैसे जीत सकता है? Like it just blew my mind. Like it just wasn't happening. It just didn't make sense. And then I started learning about these stories that उसके साथ क्या क्या हुआ, like random acts of fortuitous gratuity happened to him. Like randomly उसको जो है ना एक स्कॉलरशिप मिल गई, एक बंदा जिसको मिलना था वो मर गया, या जो भी है वो चला गया वहां पे उसने फिजिक्स सीखनी शुरू कर दी, and it just like went on and on and on. And he could have won multiple Nobel Prize. He would have won a Nobel Prize earlier had not this person like shot down his paper and destroyed him and put him down. And he was like the only brown guy in this industry of science, so it just, the story was too strong for me, and it was too fascinating. I had to tell it somehow, and it was too powerful, and I wanted to use the right medium to tell the story, and I think fiction was the best part.
So अब तो story बता दी गई ना, but you're still working on another book, so clearly there's something that's inspiring you about the art of novel writing. Yeah,
it's similar to that story. The first generation immigrant story of the US is a very fascinating story as well. It's also a story that is not told as much. The immigrant story in the US is told by white people. You only hear of Mario Puzo and The Godfather, and the Irish American story, and even the Greek American story has been told, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. But there are multiple other stories that are not told because of the people telling those stories are a different color, different race, and speak a language that hasn't been written down or something of that sort. Um,
You have 3 minutes to shit on the reluctant fundamentalist. Go.
I'm not going to shit on it. I'm not going to shit on
Really?
it. Yes. No.
I would have assumed. ये मेरा
नहीं,
assumption था that you
नहीं,
probably
नहीं.
didn't like it.
No. Mohsin Hamid is a wonderful writer. Wonderful writer. मैं तो
Yes,
comparing. I
but
can't even
Moth
compare.
Smoke is a colossally better book than The Reluctant Fundamentalist.
हर बंदे का अपना opinion है भाई. I think the story Moth Smoke was better. Reluctant Fundamentalist is a better told story. I think he grew as a writer. मैं उसके बारे में कोई गलत बात नहीं कर सकता. अब वो भी एलियस का बॉय है अपना.
मैंने सोचा एक साउंड बाइट
एलियस
निकाल लूं मैं.
एलियस
वो भी नहीं
बॉयज.
दिया. ये जो
एलियस.
बफलोज यूनाइट अगेंस्ट शहजाद साजिश चल रही
कभी
है.
नहीं.
Mohsin, if you're listening, please come on the podcast. Love to get these
हाँ,
discussions. But when you
कहता
say
हूँ
these
उसको.
stories aren't told, it's also on mediums, right? So when you see like The Big Short या Calpen के सारे shows या मीरा नायर की movies, stories are being told. Yeah, even if you see Homecoming King, Hassan Minhaj is telling a story. It's not a
अब आई है
novel.
ना. अब आई है. But where were they like like before? Haven't been told. And not only have they not been told, it's also telling a story and having the platform and the perpetual storytelling mechanism is not there, right? I keep coming back to Catcher in the Rye. Why the hell are we reading this stupid book? Is because people have decided back in the 40s or 50s when it came out that this needs to be in the curriculum for ninth graders. That's why we read this shit book, right? And हसन मिनाज की अगर शो निकल आया है नेटफ्लिक्स पे और या जिस पे भी लाइक कितने लोगों ने देखा उसको लाइक हाउ मेनी पीपल हैव perpetually watched it or continuously saw like or were told to see this or whatever. That's a different thing. And
यार पढ़ा लिखा आदमी है इसने ये काम नहीं किया होगा बट फिर भी 4 दफा पूछ चुके हैं तो मैं पूछ लेता हूँ. What do you think of Chetan Bhagat's books?
I haven't read a single one, so I don't know.
ये मुझे पता था. ये देखा मुझे ये मैंने अज्यूम कर लिया था इसलिए मैं क्वेश्चन इग्नोर कर रहा था. What writers miss out when writing a story that you wish they fix?
क्या मतलब है भाई इसका? फिर से बताना.
इसका मतलब है कि generally what do you feel is a recurring mistake that you see in books and you want to hit your head against a wall कि ये सब यार ये चीज कर लो तो ये बुक बेहतर हो जाएगी. Or maybe amateur writers would be a better example. What do you think amateur writers really miss out on?
I think I write a very different genre of fiction. Literary fiction is very different from commercial fiction. So it not only means you tell the story, but you tell it beautifully, and you make the words make sense, and you make them want the reader to read them again. You know what I mean? I'll commercial fiction का example में देता हूँ. Dan Brown is a commercial fiction writer, right? Or airport fiction, or whatever it is. I hope to God I am never like Dan Brown, regardless of how many millions of books he's sold. And I think that's the difference. So I hope that answers the question. I don't know if that's.
I don't know. मैं पूछा उससे पूछ लेंगे. What subjects did Zarrar study at university level? BA, MA? Is that what you did?
BA, MA. I did my master's in quantitative finance, and then before that, I did my bachelor's also in a similar subject. So it was very quantitative, mathematical, which is also a language. Math is a language like any other.
So, what's your take on these MFAs? Good, yeah, unnecessary?
I don't know. I don't think you can teach the art of fiction. What you can teach is how to market it. And ये सारे MFA जो करके निकलते हैं ना, ये बाद में एजेंट्स लगते हैं और ये पब्लिशिंग हाउसेस में काम करते हैं, एडिटर्स बन जाते हैं और फिर वो उन्हीं लोगों को book deals देते हैं, So for me, knowing people in the publishing industry, they've told me this, that ये बकवास है सारी. It's all basically like, I don't know because I don't know much about it. Like I taught myself how to write, and I don't want to shit on something that I don't know about, but this is what I've been told, that it's more of a marketing thing. A lot of people get the right connections. They learn what it's a very cookie cutter thing. The fiction writing is very cookie cutter now for most publishing houses. They want a very specific kind of narrative, and people have to learn to write in that narrative. If that makes
I
any
would have
sense.
assumed कि MFAs में आपको ज़्यादा freedom मिलता है, because again I did an MA in theatre, but had I done an MFA, I would have had a lot more license to choose मैंने क्या करना है. So even मैंने जो directing, acting सारी classes ली, it was really dependent on me. So I'm assuming even MFAs, it's on upon the writer. तो अगर आपको दिए में उन्होंने 6 महीने 8 महीने जिसमें आपने 2-3 क्लासें लेनी है हफ्ते की, बाकी time you have to yourself. What you make out of it is really as much on you as it is on the university.
Probably. I'm just giving you one thing that I know of. जितने भी यहाँ आप, you can Google it. I mean, that how many people that are in the publishing world, editors and writers and agents that are coming up that have MFAs, you know. It's not necessary that you have an MFA and you
I
become
know
a
I
good
should not
writer.
have mocked you for making fun of my internet, because I don't know if other people are having this issue, but it is definitely lagging for me. People think your voice is like Bob Ross. If you can hear me
Bob Ross
still,
कौन है भाई?
because मेरे लिए अब आप हो चुके हैं pause. Very much enjoying this talk. Extremely engaging. Great stuff. I'm not sure if I'm back, or am I back? Sorry, I
Yep.
don't know. I should not have mocked you for mocking my internet, क्योंकि मेरे इंटरनेट ने धोखा दे दिया. डायल अप जो मेरा चल रहा है पाकिस्तान में. So what else about storytelling did you want to talk about, Zarrar?
I think, should we touch on the stories that are taboo and why they are, and or is that not allowed?
Everything is allowed, यार, कोई टेंशन नहीं.
अच्छा, तुम कैंसिल ना हो जाओ यार भाई.
यार मुझसे ज्यादा कम ही लोग कैंसिल होते हैं. I've realized that if you're pissing everybody off, you're probably doing something right. तो किसी ग्रुप का मैं सगा नहीं हूँ. सच बोलें, टेंशन ना लें.
Yeah, so I think it's important for children, especially children or young adults, to question everything, have intellectual curiosity. The reason is, agar the human brain is a very creative brain, right? It's how we have survived for 100,000 or 200,000 years. How we evolved into this creature is because we exercise the right to use our creative muscle. The worst thing you can do as human beings is to stop that creativity or stop that curiosity. सबसे पहले, अगर let me use a taboo subject here. Quran Sharif किसने लिखा? Do you know? You don't know, right? No, nobody knows. But we take it as the word of God. People take it as the word of God. Questioning that is considered, that you can't do it. You can't do this. You cannot question how it happened. Just accept it. If a child comes to you tomorrow and says, "के यार ठीक है, ये पढ़ तो मैं रहा हूँ, और भाई लिखा है किसने?" तो आप क्या जवाब दोगे? You don't know because you haven't been told, right? And the people that told you haven't been told, and so on and so forth. And what that does is creates ambiguity in the mind, and guilt and shame and not knowing, and it shuts that creative muscle. जो आपका creative muscle वो था, वो सोच रहा था, वो कह रहा था यार ये क्या चीज है, आपने उसको बंद कर दिया. ठीक है, जब आप ये चीजें करते हो ना, जब आप बंद करते हो कोई चीज, तो आप एक perpetual ऐसी environment create कर देते हो जहां पे सब कुछ questionable हो जाता है. अब पाकिस्तान में हर चीज बैन है. ये बैन हो गया, वो बैन हो गया, सारी चीजें क्यों है? क्योंकि आपने ऐसी एक एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट की है जहाँ पे ये चीज क्वेश्चन नहीं कर सकते, वो चीज क्वेश्चन नहीं कर सकते, इंटेलेक्चुअल क्यूरियोसिटी को आपने रुका हुआ है। और हालांकि दिस वाज नॉट the concept, or I believe this is not the concept that people thought of when they thought of this country or any other country for that matter. And one of the examples of this is the Salman Rushdie book, Satanic Verses, right? And I've gotten to know this man. He's a wonderful person. He's a wonderful human being. And growing up, when we were kids, his book came out and it became a global fiasco, right? क्योंकि एक मरते हुए आयतुल्लाह खुमैनी का बेटा आया उसके पास, ने कहा यार ये किताब निकली है, इसको बैन करोगे तो तुम्हारी जो है ना वाह हो जाएगी यहाँ पे, और तुम इसके बैन ना करो, तुम इसके खिलाफ फतवा करो और तो इसको मार देते हैं, लाइक तुम्हारी वाह हो जाएगी पूरे मुस्लिम उम्मा में। तो उसने वो फतवा लगा दिया। अब जिसने नहीं भी वो किताब पढ़ी, all they know is the story of, okay, this is a bad story about something. Not only I'm not going to read it, I'm going to banish this person. I want to kill this person. I'm so hurt by this that I'm going out of my way to want to kill this person. I'm going to go in this march on the street protesting against a book that I have no idea about. But I have so much passion that I need to make sure this book isn't sold. How stupid is that?
Yeah, so
like how ridiculous is that?
You've already said कि वो politically क्यों हुआ था. So even अगर हम, I think a lot of times it's a lazy criticism कि आप चीजें बस ascribe कर देते हैं to a nation or a religion and then you think this is what it is. So even with the Ahmadi issue, it was used initially
Right.
for religious parties to come into prominence. उनको वोट नहीं पड़ना था, उन्होंने एक लोएस्ट कॉमन डिनोमिनेटर ढूंढा, हेट्रेड फैलाई, वोट लिया लोगों के।
भुट्टो ने किया था सबसे ज्यादा, भुट्टो ने किया था उनके साथ।
नहीं, मैं तो जेआई की बात कर रहा हूँ बिल्कुल शुरू में। भुट्टो ने लॉ पास करवाया था जब ऑपोजिशन को उनसे यूज किया गया, रिलीजियस ऑपोजिशन को, टू अंडरमाइन हिज गवर्नमेंट, तो वो लॉ पास हुआ, बट वो ऑर्डिनेंस और कोडिफाई ज़ियाउल हक ने किया। बट मैं बिल्कुल शुरू की बात कर रहा हूँ जब लाहौर में राइट्स हुए थे, जेआई यूज्ड इट एज अ वे टू कम इनटू प्रोमिनेंस। इस तरह अभी टीएलपी है, टीएलपी यूज्ड मुमताज कादरी टू कम इनटू प्रोमिनेंस। कौन जानता था बिफोर देम मेकिंग मुमताज कादरी इनटू अ हीरो एंड हैविंग नेशनल रैलीज एंड मार्चेस? कौन जानता था टीएलपी को? तो उसी तरह it always comes from a place of intellectual dishonesty and laziness. And
whether it doesn't matter where it comes from, what is the outcome of it? What is the outcome of it? Yeah.
So even जब आपने कुरान की बात की, ये बुक्स की बात कर लें यार, केमिस्ट्री की बुक में अगर कुछ लिखा हुआ और आप टीचर से पूछते हैं इन मोस्ट ऑफ पाकिस्तानी स्कूल्स, वो आपको सही जवाब देगी कि बंदा पूछ ले क्यों भाई, अगर किसी ने लिखा है ये फॉर्मूला है या ये अर्थ इज लाइक दिस, आप टीचर से पूछ लें क्यों, वो आगे आपको चमाड़ मार देगी कि हाउ डेयर यू क्वेश्चन द ऑथर, बिकॉज द टीचर डजंट नो, बिकॉज द टीचर डजंट नो। वो क्या जवाब दे? अब पाकिस्तान में हिजाब की अगर हम बात करें या इवन वेस्टर्न मीडिया के देखें, सेंट्रल टेनेट उन्होंने क्या बनाया हुआ है ना, वी डोंट टॉक अबाउट वेस्टर्न इंपीरियलिज्म, वी डोंट टॉक अबाउट देम ड्रोनिंग एंड किलिंग मिलियंस इन अफगानिस्तान, वी टॉक अबाउट कि ये देखें हमें ह्यूमन राइट्स या वुमेन राइट्स। इट्स जस्ट वुमेन राइट्स आर यूज्ड एज अ वे फॉर पीपल टू फर्दर देयर पॉलिटिकल इंटरेस्ट। सो हिजाब को क्वेश्चन भी नहीं करता कि यार ये तो है, ये तो इस्लाम का हिस्सा है। 13 साल के चूजे बकवास करना शुरू हो जाते हैं कि आपने बुर्का नहीं पहना हुआ, मतलब उनका कोई काम भी नहीं है। If you actually look at the root, turns out कि जो कुरान में हिजाब का लफ्ज यूज हुआ है, it has never referred to a piece of clothing. But ये जब किसी को पता ही नहीं, ये जब किसी को आइडिया ही नहीं, जब उनकी खुद की नॉलेज नहीं, तो वो किस बेसिस पे किसी और को कुछ सिखा सकते हैं? Then they will only talk about कि चुप करो बुर्का पहनो वरना लैशेस मिलेंगी।
और अगर आप उनको ये बताओ कि हिजाब जो था, अगर आप ये बताओ कि हिजाब is actually was worn by men and women because you live in a place where there's dust storms and sand storms, तो आपको covering और सर covering करनी पड़ती। And there was also elitist thing, right? जो प्रॉफिट की जो फैमिली थी वो पहनती थी, बाकी नहीं पहनते थे, you know, like it's तो अगर आप ये किसी को समझाओ तो like someone asking that from a genuine intellectual curiosity, you tell him this story, they'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And,
rumors भी फैल जाते हैं ना, somebody is in India like I've heard jeans are banned in Pakistan. No, they're not यार। लोगों को भी तो लगता है पता नहीं हम ये होमलैंड में
यार इंडिया की एग्जांपल ले लो। इंडिया को देखो, उन्होंने how fascinating it is कि वहां पे अब बैन और इस तरह की चीजें किताबों पे, ये वो, मेरी किताब उन्होंने रिटेल स्टोरों में बैन कर दी उन्होंने, like things like that. People are not allowed. पहले आर्टिस्ट आपके वहां जा सकते थे और अब नहीं जा सकते. वहां पे जो लोग रह रहे हैं ना, उनसे अगर आप कभी पूछो कि यार ये, वो कहते हैं यार पता नहीं क्या हो गया यहाँ पे, लाइक हम, तो मैं उनको कहता हूँ यार आप तो बिल्कुल हम जैसे निकले, यू नो मेरी साइरस ब्रोचा के साथ बात हुई थी ऑन यूट्यूब, उसका भी चैनल था, तो वो लाइक आई वाज लाइक टेलिंग हिम द सेम थिंग दैट यू वी यूज्ड टू लुक अप टू यू गाइस. अब साइरस ब्रोचा यूट्यूब पे आ गया यार, एमटीवी पे होता था वो, इट्स सच अ ह्यूज गाय, लाइक ह्यूज, नॉट फिजिकली बट लाइक सच अ ह्यूज लाइक आर्टिस्ट, एंड नाउ
MTV
ही
बकरा.
can't be MTV, and now he can't get a show on TV similar with Barkadat, and like some of, even like some of the the good progressive artists are gone. Atish Tasir cannot go back to Delhi because he wrote a Time article. Can you imagine that? You write something about Modi in a magazine and you get banned from going back to your home country, and not only that, you are tried for treason if you do go back.
बट
So
यार ऐसा भी नहीं है कि यहाँ चले थोड़ा ब्लेटेंट है, बट यूएस में थोड़े सोफिस्टिकेटेड मीन से सेम हरकतें हो रही होती हैं. श्योर, हॉलीवुड आपको कहता नहीं है कि यू कांट मेक दिस मूवी, यू कैन मेक एनी मूवी, टेक्निकली यू कैन मेक
yeah,
एनी मूवी दैट यू वांट. लेकिन अगर जॉन सीना भी नींद में गलती से बोल दे कि ताइवान इज अ कंट्री, तो उसको मैंडरिन में आके अपोलोजाइज करना पड़ता है. तो वो जो सोशल फाइनेंशियल आपकी रिस्ट्रिक्शंस हैं, इवन इफ यू साइन फॉर अ मार्वल, आप क्या कह सकते हैं क्या नहीं कह सकते, वो हजारों रिस्ट्रिक्शंस हैं. That financial restriction is a restriction in of itself, even if it's not codified in law. अगर आपकी
यार
सारी
फाइनेंशियल
अपॉर्चुनिटी खत्म हो जाएंगी.
रिस्ट्रिक्शन के, आप जॉन सीना की, मैं फाइनेंशियल रिस्ट्रिक्शन एक चीज है और एक अपने आप की अपने कंट्री से बैन होना एक चीज है भाई. अगर मैं एक फिल्म में ताइवान का नाम ले
तो
लूं वो एक
एडवर्ड
चीज है,
स्नोडन है
लेकिन
ना बेचारा बैंड.
हाँ, तो that's, I mean, that's a different example, right? This is, you're talking about two different things. I'm talking about how cultures and societies can get derailed by the prejudices that they keep. That's the thing that I keep saying. The prejudices that you keep right now are going to only hurt you in the future, right? Um, it's like Chris Rock का वो नहीं joke वो कहता है कि whoever you hate is going to end up in your family. Like if you hate gay people, your son's going to be gay. If you hate Puerto Ricans, your daughter's going to come home with living la vida loca. So
फैक्ट
that's
चेक हो रहे हैं आप. साइरस स्टिल हैज अ शो ऑन न्यूज 18 नेटवर्क. प्रवीण कुमार ये कह रही हैं या कह रहे हैं, सॉरी
प्रवीण, थैंक यू सो मच. मुझे नहीं पता था, मैं जरूर देखूंगा.
बट देखो ना, इतना इतना कोई छोटा, अब मुझे खुद नहीं पता, पता चला इंडिया का सबसे बड़ा चैनल है,
न्यूज
भाई इतना
18
कोई
मुझे सुना ही
इतना
नहीं
कोई
था.
छोटा चैनल है, किसी को पता भी नहीं. सो क्या पॉइंट है अगर वैसे शो पे आ रहे
No,
फ्रॉम
it's fine.
मूवी टू न्यूज 18.
No,
बट
yeah,
आई डोंट नो इफ न्यूज 18 इज अ बिग चैनल और नॉट.
I'm pretty sure it's not mainstream.
But I mean, it might just be his choice. Yeah, there are many people who can be on TV and choose to be on YouTube or choose to be on digital media. I don't think it's a step down.
It's not a step. I'm not saying it's a step down. I'm saying that it gives you the freedom to say whatever you want. And in India, the freedom is not there anymore. India is an example, and other countries are like that too, where I just said, the prejudices that you keep will end up hurting you. इसकी एग्जांपल दूं मैं आपको. इंडिया में सलाम को बैन करना किसका नुकसान हुआ सबसे ज्यादा? सलाम का ना होना पाकिस्तान की किताबों में, पाकिस्तान उसके, there's not a street named after Abdul Salam in Pakistan, right? उस नुकसान किसका हो रहा है यहाँ पे? इटली में और सर्न में और इस तरह की जगहों पे उसकी लाइक पूरी फाउंडेशंस बनी हुई हैं, उसकी लाइक लाइब्रेरीज बन रही हैं, लाइक पूरा उसकी यूनिवर्सिटी उसने बनाई है, लाइक किसका फायदा हो रहा है यहाँ पे? उस जगह का या पाकिस्तान का? एक और उसका काउंटर एग्जांपल मैं देता हूँ. इंडिया में एक बंदा था रामानुजन के नाम से, ठीक है, द ग्रेटेस्ट मैथमेटिशियन इन possibly the history of mankind. इंडिया में वो पैदा हुआ. He has no formal education in mathematics. He becomes this great mathematician जिसकी अभी तक वो problem
I
solve
think
नहीं
he
हुई.
just made a movie, a documentary.
Yeah. He inspired an entire generation of South Indians to take on mathematics and science. Google का CEO South Indian. Oracle, Microsoft, ये सारे वहां पे पूरी फाउंडेशंस इनकी ले किसने की हैं, साउथ इंडियंस ने, ठीक है, क्योंकि उनका वो पूरा वो एक कल्चर बन गया था कि हमने मैथमेटिक्स सीखनी, हमने कंप्यूटर साइंस सीखना, हमें ये करना, वो करना। अगर सलाम को आप रहने देते यहाँ पे, या आपने उसको काम करने देते, या उसके ऊपर ये ना लगाते कि यार ये MDS की हमने बात ही नहीं सुननी, या इसको इरेडिकेट कर दो पूरे कम्युनिटी से या पूरे हिस्ट्री से, तो सोचो कितने सलाम और पैदा हो सकते थे, कितने और सलाम बन सकते थे, कितने और नोबेल प्राइज आ सकते थे।
It's what you're saying. We are the stories we tell. आप जो आई एम श्योर यू डोंट वॉच पाकिस्तानी टीवी, बट कुछ हमारे जो इंटेलेक्चुअल या क्वाजा इंटेलेक्चुअल या सो कॉल्ड इंटेलेक्चुअल आके इस तरह की बातें करते हैं ना कि आप तो हैं ही जाहिल, आप तो सदा से ही जाहिल थे, आप तो कभी कुछ नहीं बनेंगे. So then you don't even see the possibility of you becoming something. Now, if you see it somebody like Salam, you be like, यार ये कर सकते हैं तो मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकता? It's an inspirational story, but our people miss
Exactly.
out on inspiration as well because of our prejudice and our hatred. Somebody saying CNN News 18 is one of the bigger news channels. Cyrus has never been banned, and the show he has done spoof on politicians, including Modi. It has 1.2 crore subs on YouTube.
I'm very
Waste
happy to
and
hear that.
fact checked. Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
guys are doing a better job than CNN did during Donald Trump's debates. Live fact checking हमारी चल रही है. So yeah, let's come back to our topic, novel writing. Have you missed out on anything? Do you want to give people any advice
No, I
on how
think
to write, what to write before we...
it's very important to allow stories to be told. Any story, even the ones you don't like, even Dan Brown should be allowed to publish a book. And you should be allowed to write these stories. You should be allowed to tell the stories. What stories eventually make it in the world and throughout time is a different argument. But the ability to let people tell stories is very, very important. We talked about language की हमने बात की कि language क्यों important है, कि एक पूरा language एक eradicate हो चुकी है हम आपकी country में, ठीक है, हमारी country में eradicate किस तरह हुई है, हमने उनकी किताबें नहीं लिखी, हमने अपने बच्चों को वो लैंग्वेज नहीं सिखाई. आप कोई बंदा अगर पंजाबी बोलता है तो अगर आप पंजाबी उसको सुनते हो, आप कहते हो यार ये पेंडू है, ये जाहिल है, ये जो भी है. इंटेलेक्चुअल कॉन्वर्सेशन आप कर सकते हो पंजाबी में, लेकिन लोग क्यों नहीं करते? क्योंकि इट्स बिन द स्टोरीज दैट वी टोल्ड आवरसेल्व्स in this last generation, this 50-60 year generation, was that this is a sort of a lower class language. आपने अपने आप को ये सिखाया है एज अ पंजाबी कि यार मैं अपने बच्चों से उर्दू में बात करूं because I'm ashamed of this language. That's a story that was not told, you know. That's a story that's been like eradicated. And so I think it's very important that the next generation doesn't have these sort of discrimination, biases on anything. Let the story be told, and then decide for yourself what do you think about it. And I think that's very important.
Self-hatred पैदा कर रहे हैं. Again, I love Shakespeare. I've studied Shakespeare. I teach Shakespeare. But अगर आप सिर्फ शेक्सपियर पढ़ाएंगे पाकिस्तानी बच्चों को और बुल्ले शाह नहीं पढ़ाएंगे, तो आपको यही लगेगा कि सब वेल्थ ऑफ नॉलेज तो उनका ही था, लिखना तो उनको ही आता था, हमें नहीं आता था. इवन दो अगर आप बुल्ले शाह की फिलोसफी देखें, इट्स मोर प्रोग्रेसिव देन वेयर द कोट एंड कोट वेस्ट इज राइट नाउ. पर हम नहीं उसको एक्नॉलेज कर सकते. हम नहीं पेपर्स लिख रहे थे फेमिनिज्म ऑफ हीर या ससी पन्नू के बारे में. तो अपनी स्टोरीज बताएं, बार बार बताएं, ताकि जो ये हमें एक आइडेंटिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स या सेल्फ हेट्रेड भी, इन्फीरियरिटी कॉम्प्लेक्स भी बन गए, ये भी थोड़े दूर हो और हमें अपना आप नजर आए. Thanks, Zarrar, for all the stories that you tell. Do you want to say something to the people to inspire them before we call it a night?
Yeah, mera bas yahi, I don't know, whoever's listening, I think it's very important to question everything, have intellectual curiosity, because that's the only way we will survive as a species, is to be curious and to learn and to tell each other the stories that we want to tell and have the freedom to tell those stories.
एमी मैं सिटी स्कूल को इतना जलील करता हूँ, सही कहते हैं वो, आई एम टू लर्न, ये उनका मोटो होता था. और वो किताबें हम जला देते थे, वो होमवर्क डायरीज हम डस्टबिन में फेंक देते थे जिन पे आई एम टू लर्न लिखा होता था. मेरी तरह मत बने, आई एम टू लर्न बने और सीखें. थैंक्स सो मच जरा, वाज अ लवली कॉन्वर्सेशन, एंड थैंक यू एवरीबॉडी फॉर लिसनिंग. बाय बाय.